work. I've seen him say this in many videos. He teaches, masculine excellence. He refers to it as, empowering men and boys to be the best versions of themselves. And I really do think that, Tate is a very good role model for young men and for women as well who wish to empower themselves too.
Okay, how do you think he can benefit women? Or is
So
benefiting women?
what he talks about is how men should be the best versions of themselves, because when a man is in his natural role as being a protector, as being a provider, he's able to provide women with a better future. And as an anti-feminist woman, as a woman who's been speaking here for months about the problems of feminism, how feminism is really harming women, how it's really making women very angry, very bitter, very anti-men, I think that his message is a very good one as well. I think that we have many things in common regarding our stances on being against feminism, being against the way in which feminism is really sucking a lot of the femininity out of women. And from what I've seen, all he seems to say is how men and women are supposed to work together, women are supposed to be treated well and provided for and cared for. From what I've seen, he says very good things about women. People say he says bad things about women. This all just comes to me as being very satirical and very humorous and very much taken out of context.
So when it comes to Andrew Tate and his kind of morality, at the moment we respect Andrew Tate, the people that respect Andrew Tate take him as a role model. He has taken on board a theology because he's a top G. He's got cars, he's got money, he's got women, he's got all of these things. Why do you think that he would still adopt and try to adopt something else? According to your understanding, why do you think he would find that necessary at the stage of life that he's currently in?
Probably just to have a bit of, spiritual, that spiritual side, because life can be very empty, if you're just focusing on money and cars and that. And I guess having that kind of spiritual underpinning can be very helpful to me.
What if somebody says, what is spirituality? It's not something that you can quantify. It's not something you can put underneath a microscope. What do you mean by spirituality? Is it just another abstract term used to convert people? What do you think? Do you think that there's such thing as spirituality?
Don't really have a massive opinion on it. I think at the end of the day, people are free to choose their own life.
I'm interested in yourself as Zarina. That's part of this cause. I'm interested in yourself. I think a lot of the viewers would be interested in yourself, your journey, and how you've come to. Because being an anti-feminist is a very interesting position, and I think if you kind of delve a bit deeper into that, I think it'll be interesting. You might be able to kind of get through to quite a few people as to why their current trajectory is not the best trajectory to be on. For example, your anti-feminist trajectory. Some people would call you a misogynist, as they do with Andrew Tate. How do you say that the two don't necessarily follow?
So being anti-feminism is not anti-women. Being anti-feminism means rejecting an ideology that turns male and female relationships into a war zone. Because the biggest problem with feminism, I come here, I hold a sign saying feminism is trash. The way I see it, feminism is really harming the kind of positive natural qualities that a man and woman are supposed to share. And I call myself a women's advocate because I believe that women are fundamentally strong, that they should work to be the best version of themselves, and that we shouldn't be prioritizing anything which is going to turn men and women against each other. So feminism is, I see, a very, very toxic, gynocentric, misandric ideology. And that's another reason why I support Mr. Tate, because I understand that many people who are against feminism are called misogynists, even though most people who are anti-feminism are not misogynists. They're just against an ideology that drives men and women apart.
I think your current stance on morality is quite interesting. Where would you say you get your morality from? Like
I
right
believe
and wrong.
that humans are generally altruistic by nature. I think that we're born with a desire to be empathetic and compassionate towards other people. I do believe this is something hardwired into us. I do believe this is something that we should all try to emulate. So I think that this is actually a very innate thing that we all possess.
So, am I correct to assume that you're saying you get your morality from yourself or from society?
I would say I get my morality from the way my parents raised me.
From the way your parents, like what morality were they about? Were they religious? Were they non-religious? They were non-religious, yeah. Would you say that this is also a part of the problem? When people rely on and say that morality is only something, well, morality is something that you just look within yourself. We're all born with it. when the studies tell us that human beings are more inclined towards rest, they're more inclined towards lying. For example, studies done when a child is, children as young as 2, they say at least 50% of them lie. An adult daily would be lying quite often. So when humans are predisposed to surviving, resting, succeeding, naturally this is going to happen at the expense of other people, isn't it? So if we're too individualistic, we're too subjective, I think this is where this whole wokeism ideology is coming from. Do what thou wilt. Or I feel like a woman, therefore I'm a woman. Or I'm feeling like this, therefore you now need to cater to me. So I guess what I'm trying to say, Zarina, you said your name, is it? I guess what I'm trying to say, Zarina, is it's more helpful, and that's why you've got people like Andrew Tate, the Sartoro, the shooter, Sneeko. A lot of these people are going towards an objective morality, a morality which is not shifted by our whimsical desires, however we're feeling today, whatever society is saying. So what do you think about this, that we need objective moral anchorage? Do you want me to talk a bit more about that?
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Again, I do think that people are fundamentally born with an innate knowledge of right from wrong. I think this is something which we all have right within us.
Let me give you an
I
example.
completely agree that with the woke ideology, there's definitely, say, a problem with how wokeism is affecting.
Let me give you an example. For example, Eskimos. Within the culture of the Eskimos, what they do is they share their wives around. Yeah, so if you were born in the Eskimo culture, then that's something that would be considered normal to you. If you were alive, let's just say 40 years ago, it would be normal to you that homosexuality is a disease. If you saw a homosexual, you would advise them to go to a therapist, and they would need some sort of therapy. People even in Texas about 50 years ago, if women walked down the street and they showed this part of their hands, they would be deemed to be promiscuous. Words would be said about them. And even today, we're living in a society at this moment in time where if you fail to say someone's pronouns correctly, you have certain countries like Canada who are trying to criminalize that. So I guess, Zarina, what I'm trying to say is that we're living in a time where even, I'm trying to be careful with my word now, pedos are now being accepted within the spectrum as minor attracted people. So the more morality is, love is love. Do you believe love is love? Generically, openly? Or do you believe, no, there is some nuances to this statement? Because that's what we're here to do.
So I do believe that, if two people love each other, if they're both consenting adults, that is a perfectly fine thing. I have nothing against personally, two men, two women being together. There's obviously a big problem with, the way people are preying on young children, the way this is obviously something that's been very much swept under the rug. I think a lot of people are concerned about this as well. They're concerned about the effects of, especially when you think of things like, child marriage, marrying a young person when they're very young, when they're not, like a grown man marrying a child. That is a very, very, dangerous thing. I think this is the big problem, which a lot of people are quite concerned about. So yeah. Love between two people at a certain age, for sure.
Okay, then I guess the counter question or the counterpoint to that would be, what do you think about a brother and a sister that are both consenting adults using contraception, having intercourse? Do you think that's okay? Do you think that's beneficial to society?
Not really sure I'd like to comment too much on that at present.
I guess what I'm trying to say is the statement love is love, which is a statement that's purported by the wokes, the wokist, the woke leftists, whatever you want to call them. And when a person concedes to leaving morality open, and open to a degree that it relies upon one's subjective desires, anything goes. A brother with a sister, two brothers, like there was an article that came out, it was on the Jeremy Kyle show. Two homosexuals were on the show and they did a DNA test and they ended up being brothers. And I just found out just recently that, it was a big shock and, as you can possibly imagine. So then they started, rekindling their relationship of being brothers rather than lovers. So what I'm trying to say is that if we leave morality too open, and leave it to the hands of people, which children as young as 2, 50% of them would lie. You leave a child in a room and tell him, if you do this, then you will get a bigger prize, and you leave the room and that child would cheat just so they can win and get that bigger prize. Copious studies on this. So we know that as human beings, we're not predisposed to being good people. That's why only 5% of our time as humanity, only 5% has been war-free. 95% has been humans fighting with each other. So left to our own devices, like the Joker said, we would eat each other, civilized people. So if you leave Zarina, what I'm saying is, I think your cause is good. And I think your moral points are definitely something I can resonate with as a Muslim. And Andrew Tate could as well. And that's why Islam really appealed to him, as Sneeko and Sartero, the shooter, and a lot of his close people. Even Tristan Tate speaks very positively about Islam as well. What I'm trying to say is that Islam is very close with your worldview. And the thing is, just one aspect, which is leaving morality open. When you do that, I say that will leave the door open to a lot of vices coming. Pedophilia will become okay. Bestiality will be considered okay. Aborting a child that's above, a reasonable age, and you say, it was a mistake, just lob him out. So life then becomes an absurdity. Little kids, lobbing off their parts just because they feel, do what thou wilt was actually something an occultist of this country, Aleister Crowley, that's what he would say, do what thou wilt. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, and I hope you've understood this, which is, if left to our own devices, yes, your current morality I think is good, but Zarina, yeah? So Zarina, if you continue, more and more things are going to happen in society that's really going to force your hand, and it's going to make it very uncomfortable for you to even utter a few things. Like, I'm sure you have an opinion about the vaccine. I'm sure you have an opinion about Andrew Tate. I'm sure you have an opinion with Russell Brand, which I think is in accordance to what you're saying. You're following what's going on with Russell Brand, isn't it?
Sure, I think that's all really interesting. But yeah, at the end of the day, just to bring back to the main point, I think that this man is definitely innocent. I do agree that, society, there's a lot of issues.
I guess, Zarina, what I was saying was, let's look for the root thing that Andrew Tate stands for. It's morality. He says, you know what? It's morally incorrect for a man to tell a woman to work and to do this and to raise the house. That's the role of the woman. What's the role of the man? He's making moral statements. And what I'm saying, Zarina, is that people watching that may be of a different morality, they might be part of a liberal morality, they might be part of a Christian morality. What I'm trying to say is that discussions on morality is incredibly important. You've definitely made your point, and you've made it very well. And I hope, people, take this on board. And I appreciate your honesty as well. But definitely, for our survival, like Andrew Tate, he's a man that can look after himself. But even Andrew Tate himself felt the need for Islam. Despite being in a position that he was in, being influential or whatever, he still felt the need to accept Islam. So for us, even as the viewers and people that are here, I think it's very important for us to realize the magnitude of the decision that he took and why he took this decision.
Religion can definitely fulfill a certain void. We feel that way with people feel that way with Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, Shintoism. People definitely, and Islam as well. People definitely do find religion as a way to fulfill that sense of, we'll say, lacking that internal void. So I can definitely see the goods in finding a certain religion, following a certain religion, and I can.
Have you looked into Islam, or what points in Islam would you say? Although I've already identified a few, what would you say aligns with your current worldview?
I'm not sure it's helpful for me to comment so much on that.
Because we've already done the main part of the discussion that you wanted, isn't it? So now we're just talking about kind of extra things, morality and stuff like that. The reason why I think it is helpful, Zarina, is I'm not here to put down any religion. In fact, I would say if the UK were Muslims or Christians or Jews, it would be more helpful than being atheistic liberals that say just take morality from yourself.
Most atheists, I'm not atheist, most atheists, they actually talk about evolution, how people have evolved to be moral, and how, again, things like altruism is actually an evolutionary human trait. And they would say, for example, that humans are innately empathetic, that we're innately compassionate, and that society just needs to have certain, rules put in place to enforce that. And I think that's what most atheists or non-religious people actually say.
The only thing with that is it goes against the principle of evolution, which is survival of the fittest. That's incompatible with morality, in fact, because it's not, morality is actually separate to survival of the fittest, because according to Darwin, it's just about survival. I need to survive so I can pass on my genes. It doesn't matter if I'm moral. Somebody that sacrifices their life for somebody weaker than them, that's something that is problematic for Darwinism, in fact. Giving into charity when you're supposed to be thinking of survival of the fittest is posing problems, actually posing problems.
Survival of the fittest generally means that the fittest genes pass on, so the strongest genes survive, and that ensures the future survival of the human race.
Right.
Effectively.
That's right. So when you are sacrificing yourself for somebody weaker than you, it goes against that. And evolution actually starts with the first self-replicating DNA or gene or organism. It doesn't talk about how the universe began. And sometimes, Zarina, the reason why it's very important is because if we think and if we live by a certain morality, it actually will proceed in making us better people. I'll give you an example. Somebody who doesn't believe in any morality, he believes that human beings are good and that's fine. Okay. He believes that, or he or she, when we're going to die, we're just going to become dust. We're going to become dust. If a person believes we're going to become dust, there's no accountability, there's no judgment, then do what thou wilt. Then what's going to happen is you cannot tell the difference, because if you don't have morality, you can't say what's right, what's wrong. What I mean by this is, if somebody is, because you're saying this is the role in the home, the man needs to be the provider, the woman needs to be the one looking after the home. These are moral points. These align with Christianity, they align with Judaism, they align with Islam. So that's one of the points. They do, of course. Of course. But the thing, when you say humanity or humanism, that's where I would say it depends. Because humanism is open to a person's desires. It's up to you how you view things. There's no necessary morality. It's majority rules. For example, if you're in a society where, let's just say you're running out of food and you have dead bodies, if scientists say for our survival we can eat dead bodies, that is what would be happening. If people say in order for us to survive we need to, and if your survival depends on torturing a little child, they would say, utilitarianism, survival of the majority was punishment of the few, it's okay, no problem. So Zarina, I think this is definitely an important part of the conversation.
Of course.
Morality, where we get our morality from, what is this morality, and how do we make sure that it's consistent, it's objective. Because if somebody says, for example, you may say that, and you may argue, look, a man's job is to earn. A woman's job is to make sure that the house is in a hospitable, and she's raising the kids, and she's making the home environment hospitable, yeah? Someone would say, why? Now, how would you argue that without using morality?
Well, effectively, I would say that this is a very biologically evolutionary trait that, men have evolved to be providers, women have evolved to be caregivers, and that's not to say, I'm not negating women desiring to have careers or to have jobs or to have independence. Somebody's saying that in a relationship, typically, a man's role is to provide, a woman's role is to be a caregiver. That's just the basic way in which people have evolved, the way in which the man and the woman have evolved.
But then, do you see how the argument, when you take evolution, because evolution as a theory, we don't necessarily understand too much about it. because it's a growing theory. Scientists claim it's the best answer that we have at this moment in time. But again, if evidence comes tomorrow, I mean, it can be taken in this direction, it can be taken in that direction. And the more we understand about evolution, we are predisposed to eating, overeating. We're predisposed to lying, to cheating. Do you see? And we're predisposed to believing in a God as well. But just like when a man sees a woman, he's attracted towards her. But then Darwinian evolution or evolution says mating, isn't it? You want to mate with her. However, our morality tells us this is not the right time. Speak to her, take her, speak to her father, maybe, find out about her, let her speak to you. There's a process. So that's against evolution. Do you see? So if you argue in terms of evolution, then things become very mechanistic, things become very individualistic, survival based. But the way society can truly function is to become sometimes not selfish. It's the opposite of selfish. Selfless. Yeah, being selfless. That's actually anti-evolution. Being selfless. So that's where morality comes in. And that's why even Einstein said, science can't explain morality. And morality is something that we need as an anchorage. I would say your argument would become stronger if you came from an objective, moral kind of anchorage. And Islam, I think, would definitely provide that in the sense that, number one, the roles that women have, the roles that men have, believing in a creator, still, going about one's life, but not worrying about cameras, not worrying if someone's watching, doing stuff solely for the pleasure of God. And stuff like that, even giving you strength in prison.
Do you think that can be provided from other religions as well?
Religion in general.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is religion in general, but of course when it comes to Islam, I would argue, and you can retort, and I would be glad to kind of respond. I would argue that Islam, in terms of its consistency, coherency, and the evidence that it provides, it's the most robust. In terms of, say, manuscript evidence, empirical evidence, rationality, philosophy, cosmology, in terms of even the preservation of its text. Christianity doesn't claim that, Judaism doesn't claim that, Vedas don't claim that. They don't claim to have manuscript evidence of their text dating to the time of revelation. So what I say is that out of the answers, or out of the options, Islam is the most relevant, and that's why even in the anti-woke war that we're seeing, Islam is at the forefront. Not Christianity, not Judaism. Why? Because people can interpret it. That's why I pinpointed to objective morality, and objective morality that you can pin down. If I say something to you that the Prophet said it, you can, Zarina, you can ask me, who did he hear it from? So if I said that the Prophet said this, you say, where did you get that from? I can tell you who said it. I can tell you who he heard it from, who he heard it from, and who he heard it from. I can tell you the chain of narration. I can tell you every single person in the chain, their name, their family, their tribe. So we have a more robust way of preserving knowledge, of presenting knowledge, and the accuracy of knowledge. For example,
Hinduism is the world's oldest religion, and they have literally texts dating back to literally thousands of years, way before the Abrahamic religions were created.
They have no manuscript, the Vedas. The Vedas as books. There is not a single manuscript that dates to the time of preservation. No Hindus ever claimed that, and I speak to many Hindus, and I've read their texts. They never claimed that. The Christians never claimed that. The Jews never claimed that. And as per Hinduism being...
Isn't the Quran based on the Old Testament?
You're asking very good questions now. Let's take one at a time, yeah? So you said Hinduism is the oldest religion. As Muslims, we argue that Islam did not start at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Islam started at the time of the first man, Adam. We don't believe it started at the time of Muhammad. We believe the last revelation came at the time of Muhammad. You see, it didn't start at that time. So we believe it predates even Hinduism. And the second thing, that was a good question. What did you say?
The Bible, or the Quran, a lot of it's based off the Old Testament.
Yeah. So bear in mind, as Muslims we believe approximately, give and take, there are 124,000 prophets that have come. Yeah, 124,000 in different civilizations. They were given different books. We believe Moses was a prophet. He was given the Torah, the Old Testament as is known today, but obviously it's changed. We believe if we were at the time, if you and me were at the time of Moses, we'd be believing as Moses as the prophet and the Torah as the book. If we were alive at the time of Jesus, we'd be following Jesus and we'd be following the Injil that we call the book that was revealed. But we believe, Zarina, that the books then got changed. Yeah, because the books coming down, they were a form of test for us as well. However, the Quran is the last revelation that was to be revealed and no prophet was to come after. Therefore, God promised to preserve the Quran. Now, you might be thinking that's all well and good. Somebody else might claim something. But there are certain ways that you standing here, you can see how the Quran could be preserved. The first way is memorization. The Quran is the only one of the ancient books that's memorized from cover to cover by a significant part of the Muslim population. They're called Huffaz, people that memorize the book. And children as young as 6 memorize it from cover to cover. The New Testament, it's not within the culture of Christianity to memorize, and in fact I haven't come across a single Christian that claims to do so. Same with the Old Testament, same with the Vedas. They might claim that there was little pockets that they memorized here and there, but as a whole book, no. Muslims, you can go to a mosque in Ramadan, they will be reciting from memory. So the Quran, from memory. Even the language of the Quran, Zarina, is in Arabic, which is a live language. It's one of the top 5 languages in the world. Old Testament was written in Hebrew. It's not necessarily a live, most spoken language. The New Testament, the author was Jesus who spoke Aramaic. Aramaic is not a live language. When it comes to Hinduism, yeah, the Vedas were revealed in Sanskrit. Sanskrit is not a live language. So even in terms of accessibility, even in terms, for example, they'll say Jesus said this. How? Okay, Mark said this. Okay, can you tell me a chain of narration going from Mark to Jesus? No Christian till today has been able to provide a chain of narration from the gospel writers to Jesus. However, with me standing here, I can tell you a saying of the Prophet in the language of Arabic. I can tell you who I learned it. For example, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, Al-mar'u ma'a man ahab. A person will be with whom he loves. Yeah? So we get that from Ahmad. He gets that from Muhammad ibn Abu Adi. He gets that from Humayd at-Tawil. He gets that from Anas ibn Malik. He gets that from Muhammad, peace be upon him. The Prophet said, don't kill women and children. We get that from Imam Malik. He gets that from Nafi. He gets that from Ibn Umar. He gets that from the Prophet. So we have chains. We have precise, and that's why, Zarish, going back to Zarina, to your original point, when we're talking about morality, when we're talking about he said, she said, we need to have strong criteria. You can't just say he say, she say, Chinese whispers, and then if people come in 10 years' time, your children or your children's children, we need a way that even they can verify the truth. There's a manuscript. The oldest manuscript of the Quran is in the University of Birmingham. That was there at the time of preservation. So, and this, the evidence has continued, the numerical miracles and this and that. But the point remains, Islam is unique, even in terms of the falsification in the Quran as well. But I feel like you want to go.
Sure, no, very interesting discussion.
Yeah. But if you ever want to kind of continue this, or you want to know more, I would say it will help your cause.
Sure.
It will help your cause, it will help your life. And at the end of the day, Zarina, when we die, we're going to go into our own grave, isn't it? So it's all well and good about what's happening out and about, but our biggest priority should be ourselves. And how do we judge what's right and wrong? Morality, where do we get morality from? There has to be a creator. When we look around us, it didn't just come by chance or by nothing, or it doesn't make sense. When we see, a bag that doesn't belong to somebody, you wouldn't say, yeah, that existed, came about over hundreds of years. But no, you would immediately say it has an owner. If I see your jacket, which is very nice, I'll say, who designed it? Which shop did you get it from? They say, oh, that jacket is very nice. Came over hundreds and hundreds of years. You take that as an insult, you see. So even, these questions we should definitely kind of reflect on them. And I appreciate, you know, you coming and wanting to talk as well. And of course, if you want to come and talk again and, you know, talk about a different topic, I'll be more than glad to.
I can see you're very open-minded, which is very nice.
Thank you, Zarina. Thank you. Our respect. Yeah. Okay, thank
Seems a
you.
bit counter-respectful to shake someone's hand.
No. Shall I tell you what it is? When you shake someone's hand, as a man, no, you know what it is? It's not germs. Like the first time I shook my wife's hand, I'm telling you, I had goosebumps. Because physical touch, I think, especially when it comes to cross-gender, it should be with somebody that will respect you. Somebody that will be to some degree committed to you.
I think most people just see handshaking as a sign.
No, this is within Western civilization. If you were to go to, for example, Japan, they don't do that. In India, they don't do that. This is actually the Western system. And, you know, if a Western person wants to do it, but if a Western person says, no, this is the correct way, this is the right way, I would argue not necessarily because...
Correct way for that culture.
Yeah. So for us, we're saying that, you know what, we give respect to you by not touching you. If I want to touch you in any way, then I need to commit to you. And that's through marriage. Yeah, I'm not going to just randomly, if you would go to France, they would say, exactly. What do you think about that?
Thank you very much anyway. Yes, as said, and Tate, I really hope this video doesn't get shadow banned. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Inshallah, sir.
Thank you.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Say that again. Oh, where's the case, bro?
Listen.
Bro, you flopped me, bro.
Listen, I'll tell you one thing. Sorry, 1 minute. Listen, I'll be real with you, yeah?
Bro. Let me tell you something. It's not good for us to. It's not good for us to speak on camera because one of the brothers. He claims that there is a police case pending with you.
What? On the Holy Quran? Listen, on the Holy. 1 second.
Yeah.
On the Holy Quran, that's not true.
Bro.
I know who you're talking about. I did.
I don't know his
Listen,
name.
I know who you're talking about. Listen, no. On the Holy Quran, this is not true. Don't worry about it. You don't have to stress about it. I mean, I swear to God.
So that's why, you know, when he came, he said, you know what, brother?
Why do you listen to him? What does the hadith say? The hadith says between the truth and falsehood is 4 fingers. Between the truth and the falsehood is 4 fingers. If you hear something but you don't see, you have to see the book. They said the one that slanders a believer, he will not enter heaven until after 10,000
And that's why
years.
I haven't accused you of anything.
No, of course.
Yeah. That's why all I said was that's what's here at the moment.
Listen, who do you fear, Allah or people?
I fear Allah. That's why I'm staying neutral.
Okay, of course. Because, listen,
That's why I'm staying neutral.
of course you're going to fear Allah.
Let's have a quick one.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, yeah? Before, I'll come back in 20 minutes, yeah? Because
Of course.
you see the...
yours, right?
You see,
Yeah.
My objective.
Oh, no.
You see today's 2023.
Yeah.
2023. Do you want to say something quickly?
No, I just want to have a quick private word.
Sorry. Yeah, go on. Apologize.